everyone. This is ETHRWorld Conversations, and I am excited to be here today with Ayaskant Sarangi, CHRO of Mphasis, to explore a topic that's shaping the future of work: the balance between technology and human potential. We'll be diving into how technology is transforming organizations and the role of the CHRO in this journey. Plus, we'll wrap up with some rapid-fire questions to get to know Ayaskant a little better. Welcome, Ayaskant, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today for this conversation.
Thank you, Apeksha, for inviting me over. The pleasure is as much mine.
Thank you so much. So let's kick things off with a big picture question. So across industries, technology isn't just about making things more efficient. It's kind of fundamentally changing how work is defined. So from your perspective, how is this shift influencing the balance between human creativity and digital innovation? And maybe what cultural shifts are you seeing as a result of this transformation?
Great question, Apeksha. And let me just reflect a bit on the last 20, 25 years. I started my career in the late 90s, right? Saw some very interesting phases. One obviously was the advent of internet, right? And that ensured that information was available. It was about connections, right? So that was like one massive, massive shift that has happened, and it's kind of influencing all of us over the last 25 odd years. Second interesting thing I saw was the advent of ATMs, because I remember visiting banks, meeting the teller to withdraw my cash, but then suddenly going and feeling empowered to go and kind of take it out, using my PIN at an ATM. Well, I thought was very, very profound. And now, what's happening is also extremely interesting, simply because currently it is about developing machines which are getting better by utilizing human intelligence. Let me put it simply. So it's really, really powerful. And but if I see the last two waves, I look at the future with a lot of optimism, because um, technology has always been an enabler, uh, vis-a-vis something that is kind of replacing stuff that causes chaos and confusion, right? In fact, I see um, technology as far more empowering to us as individuals, right? So coming back to the workforce, two or three major shifts, right? One obviously is um, complex activities will get done faster because of technology, very, very clearly. And that's like a strong momentum of velocity every organization is going to have. Second is the barrier to innovation would come down, because at the end of the day, what would sell is an interesting idea to any consumer. So the ability for organizations to innovate by leveraging technology becomes much, much better. And that is the true power, right? So any organization which can align its group of employees to embrace tech, keeping in mind that, look, you have to see tech as empowering you to innovate better, to do more complex activities faster, is going to win the race in the long term. Now, coming to your other point, which is on culture, that's very, very powerful, because I think there are three, four key elements to culture. What is culture to begin with? It's what all of us do at work, day in and out, right? The unsaid behavior at scale, right? But the three, four elements that technology is truly touching, and therefore culture itself is undergoing a change. The way we communicate is changing. The way we collaborate with each other or with a group of individuals, that is changing. And the most powerful element, the way we take decisions, that's changing. When you look at the environment for the future, the shift on culture would be huge for any organization, because all these three areas, how I communicate, how I collaborate, how I take decisions, are getting impacted, um, both good and not so good, by tech. And here again, my ability to leverage tech to use to my advantage creates a winner. And then lastly, as an HR professional, I would say that in fact makes the role of a line manager or any manager, any leader in any organization, that much more interesting in future perspective, because at the end of the day, it would continue to still be about leading peeps, leading teams, leading people, right? But leading them in this environment, right? And that would call for a shift in leadership behaviors that every leader or manager has to exhibit going forward. And that has a profound impact on the culture of an organization, right? So that's exactly how I at least see all these things playing out. The good thing about this subject, Apeksha, in my view, is there is all of us are discovering. So nobody can say that this is how exactly things are going to pan out. So I don't want to intend to present myself as an expert here, but it's good to study these trends to see how these would take shape, and being proactive about it and being agile about embracing changes of style to kind of make it all work.
Sure, and very well articulated, Ayaskant. In fact, we, in our different conversations with other HR leaders, we are also seeing that technology is not just about automating tasks, but enhancing human creativity and fostering innovation in maybe unexpected ways at the moment. So it will be interesting to see how this balance evolves further in the coming years. So let's move on and dive into some practical matters also. We talked about technology and how it continues to disrupt industries. So how are organizations reimagining their people strategies, especially in areas like talent acquisition, workforce planning, and HR operations and all? And looking ahead, what skill do you think will be critical to future-proof the workforce?
No, great question. I mean, i- if your question is more specific to the HR space, I think almost all companies that I'm interacting with in my space are truly embracing AI in terms of reimagining their hiring process. There's some great tools that are available in the market, which kind of helps you, look at how do you assess talent, how do you um, go through tons of information very rapidly, how do you reduce bias on your hiring decisions, how do you create a very good proactive employee experience as part of your onboarding, right? So that's one big track. The second big area where a lot of AI is getting used is in the space of learning and development, right? Which is really more about imagining nudging employees to learn new skills, especially in our industry, in the IT industry, to so that they continue to remain relevant for potential future technologies as they emerge, right? So again, a lot of AI, right? Which actually kind of you can imagine it's kind of working like a companion to a leader to say, hey, this is what if I learn is going to benefit me personally, right? HR ops, right? Because there are a lot of repeatable activities are there, right? Um, and then there again, a lot of good work is happening overall to kind of ensure that how do we again um, do a lot more things faster. But if I step back and look at it, I think what the true opportunity that this current environment is presenting to all of us functionally is that, I mean, as HR as a function has been talking about hyper personalization for a long time, at least for last 5 7 years we have been talking about it. But now one can truly create a hyper personalized environment for an employee thanks to tech, right? um, so one of the things that we are doing as we speak is, look, when you look at any HR system, it would have a lot of vertical systems. What I mean by that is that there's a hiring tool, there is a learning tool, there is a skill repository tool, there's a HR operations policy tool, so on and so forth. While those are good vertical tools for the function, an employee would love to see it horizontally in terms of how I've been onboarded, what skills have I learned, what policies are applicable to me, how am I moving up the value chain from my own career perspective. So the ability to create horizontal tools on top of these vertical tools is how at least we are seeing the world moving. And that's exactly where we are kind of making our investments to ensure that we are creating a more hyper personalized environment for our teams across.
Great points, Ayaskant. Investing obviously in the right kind of tools and skills is so crucial right now, especially when it comes to fostering a workforce that's not just reactive but proactively agile at the moment. Let's talk about the CHRO role itself, how it has been evolved over the years. From beginning, we see them as people leaders to now being at the center of organizational transformation. With all these changes, how do you see it evolving further, and how do you personally navigate this shift at Mphasis?
It's an interesting question again, Akshay. I would say, look, I, if I were to reflect back on myself, right, because I have had a more than 27, 28 years of experience, I think three or four things are emerging, right? One is I really need to love technology. I need to be technologically savvy. I just can't say that, that's for the techies to take care of and let me not, don't bother me with technology. Right? That's one massive shift. As an HR team, we would need to go through, and for that, for the HR team, even starting with me as an individual. Second is going back to my earlier response, reimagining employee experience is critical because that would become a differentiator between organizations. And therefore, the traditional strategies that organizations used, which were kind of the brainchild of HR in quite a few places, that has to be reimagined to kind of ensure that we continue to create a very engaging environment for our teams and employees. The third is, I would say, the measure of success that has to undergo a change, right? In fact, I've been thinking about it, putting my mind towards it. That look, as a function, um, the set of metrics that we all had, and we assumed that doing well on those metrics indicated success, right? Now, those itself are undergoing a change. So therefore, looking at what are the right metrics to look at, is my human capital in the right hands, is an interesting shift. So doing more of the same is not going to help. Fourth, I would say, is change management. I think when a lot of, if I look at a good HR talent coming out from campus, I don't think like we are teaching OB1, OB2, labor laws, etc. I think time has come for us to teach change management, and teach it very, very formally with a lot of rigor, because that's become a reality, right? So CHRO of the future would need to be proficient in change management, and see to it that it's a core part of his or her job, right? And then last but not the least, I would say the entire org pyramid or the workforce design, that's going to undergo a change, right? Because the traditional way of doing work is going to change. Therefore, what would the right people mix be? Where would tech come in? Where would human interventions come in? That becomes uh, very, very important. So having that clarity of thought that these are areas where I'm going to use technology, these are areas where I'm going to use human interventions to design an organization of the future from a classical OD perspective, would also undergo a change. And that is something all of us as HR leaders would need to learn, embrace, have a share of mistakes, and keep working towards it, right? That's how at least I see things evolving. Again, without underestimating the impact of the three things I talked about early in the morning, right? One is, how do I communicate? How do I collaborate? And how do I take decisions? I think those axis has to be well integrated with the role itself that one is underplaying for himself or herself.
Sure, the transformation that you're describing from people leader to a catalyst for organization change is an incredible shift in this function. You know, HR is no longer just about managing people, it's about driving culture, innovation, and ethics alongside technology that you're very well, talked about. We'll now shift to the next segment. We'll have some rapid fire questions for you, Ayaskan. So I'll go ahead with my first question to you.
Sure.
So one tech trend you're most excited about in the workplace right now?
Generative AI. I mean, just the sheer implications of that are unknown, right? So that's truly, truly exciting, because just the unknown excites me, and yeah, it's a rapid fire, so I'm keeping it short. So
Yeah, sure. Moving on, a skill you wish more leaders would develop in 2025.
adaptability and
Oh,
decision making. And
okay,
when I say, let me qualify decision making with limited data.
sure. Yeah. And one HR myth you'd love to bust forever.
I think this myth that is there that HR decides compensations. I don't think HR decides compensation. HR enables a budget framework in discussions with the finance team in terms of my P&L and what's my affordability to pay. I don't think HR sits down and sit down and write recommends increment to every individual. That doesn't happen. Please,
So next, yeah, a leadership mantra you swear by.
I would say career management is a journey, right? And uh, career decisions look good or bad in retrospect.
Any quote that resonates with you or that you maybe live by in your role as a leader or as a professional overall?
There is this quote by Abraham Lincoln. It says, "The best part about the future is that it comes one day at a time." So I
Yeah,
think
great.
that is something which I try and do for myself, even personally, right? So I carry that self at work.
Wow. Great. And what a way to wrap up this conversation, Ayaskan. Thank you for joining us today and sharing such great insights with us. It's clear that the future of work is an exciting and ever-evolving journey, and it's been truly fascinating to hear your perspectives on how both you and your organization are navigating these changes. It's been a pleasure having you with us today. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for inviting me over, Apeksha, once again, and all the best to you.